What is going on, my fellow geeks, and welcome back to Raving Geeks.
I do have a media recommendation.
I love Lord of the Rings. Superheroes, movies, a little jack of all trades, I guess.
So what makes me a geek?
All right, what is going on, my fellow geeks, and welcome back to Raving Geeks, the weekly pop culture podcast from Central Michigan Life, where we discuss all things geek culture, which is like high culture, but better. If this is your first time joining us, make sure you follow the CM Life Instagram and Twitter pages for updates on the podcast, and to look for us wherever you find your podcasts, including YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on our website at www.cm-life.com. My name is Brendan Valentine, and I'd like to thank you all for joining me today. With me, we have my fellow co-hosts, Isaac and Hope, and we have a special guest for you today, Jeff Abraham. I'll let them all introduce themselves in a second with our question of the week, which is, drum roll please, what is your favorite Disney park? So this can mean anything, like there's a couple down in Orlando, there's Disneyland out in California, and there's a couple like international parks is kind of like what we're opening it up to. But I can give my answer first and then pass it off to the hosts and our guest. But my favorite Disney park, it took me a little while. I narrowed it down to two, between Epcot and Hollywood Studios. I like Epcot because I like travel, but I ended up having to choose Hollywood Studios because that's where I believe that's where Galaxy's Edge is. And that is my favorite Disney attraction. Even though I haven't been there, that's like bucket list of things I have to go check off and see. I have to go make my lightsaber and ride the rides and everything like that. Seeing as like the story that happens on the ride is canon in the Star Wars universe. So like I have to check that off my list. So host, when do you want to go next?
Yes. Hello. Isaac Hunter here. I have never been to a Disney park, but I will eventually. That's the goal. And so I did peruse through a handful. But I do think very similarly, Brendan. I think Epcot has always looked so cool. The different all around the world in one place. But also Galaxy's Edge looks so cool. I've been watching videos of it. I one day as well. Maybe we can go together. It just looks really cool.
Speaking of videos of it, Isaac, have you seen the one where like there's like a little like stage thing with the actors, or like they bring out the characters and then like Darth Vader comes out and there's a Jedi there and he's like, "Oh, do you want to help me fight Darth Vader?" And he pulls like a kid out of the audience. But then the kid like gets on one knee and is like, "No, I want to join Darth Vader." It's my favorite thing on the internet. She's like 6. I think it's so funny.
Priorities
anyway,
right there.
Yeah, tangent. But
all right, Hope.
Yes. Hey everyone, I am Hope Gooderl. I have also never been to a Disney park. I was promised by my oldest sister and her husband that for their 10-year anniversary, I would go with them to essentially babysit the children. Well, the children are 7 and will be 3 this year, and last year was their 10-year anniversary, so it wouldn't have worked out for the children to be there and, actually enjoy it. But I'm hoping that one day in the future, my best friend and I actually have like plans as well, because we really want to go to Harry Potter World and everything.
That's Universal.
Yeah, I know Disney. That's Universal. But so I was going to say, my favorite for the Disney parks is Animal Kingdom. And the reason why I say that is because I've been watching the magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom on Disney Plus, and I love the animals, and I would absolutely love to see all of like the parrots flying over to the Tree of Life. Like that would be so cool to go on the safari and everything. So yeah,
it is very cool. Awesome. And now for our guest, Jeff, what is your favorite Disney park?
Okay, so I'm Jeff Abraham, and I'd have to say that my favorite park is probably Hollywood Studios, but at the time it was MGM Studios, and essentially that's where I grew up as a designer. So I love it. Did a ton of work in that park. The people are great. The attractions are great. The layout, the way you move through the space, it's great. But I have to agree, Animal Kingdom is also with the safari, the animals, the passion that the Imagineers put into the design of the place, operations. It's an incredible park. and you can just go. You don't have to ride anything. You can just go hang out there for the day and just wander around. It's beautiful. So, but then I also want to add in Magic Kingdom, because it's the Magic Kingdom, and why would you not want to be someplace that's magic, right? So the kids love it, the adults love it. It's got everything that you want.
I haven't been to Magic Kingdom since I was like really little. I don't think I think that was when I went when I was like 6. It's been a while.
Well, it sounds like we need to pack all you guys up and like truck you down to Orlando, and then we have to do the full experience because you're missing out.
I'm fully vaccinated April 14th, so
all right.
It should be
April
good.
15th is when I'm fully vaccinated.
If we get GoPros, it could be a podcast.
Oh,
Let's do it.
make a TikTok, like a few different TikToks. Come on.
Exactly.
Let's do it. Alrighty. So before we move on to our very exciting main portion of the podcast, which we'll elaborate on in a little bit, we'd like to just quick rapid fire our geek news today. So who would like to start?
I can start. My geek news is also historical. It's just that a World War II codebreaker by the name of Alan Turing is going to be honored on the UK's new 50-pound note.
Oh, really?
Which is like being Ulysses S. Grant in America. Yeah, and I think that's really cool. Like, I don't know, he's not a royal. He's not something. He's just a cool codebreaker. And I think that counts as a geek in my book.
What was the movie that was made about him? Was it the Imitation Game that's about Turing with Benedict Cumberbatch?
So. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And if you've seen that, he's major geek, but like really cool about it too. Nice.
Yeah, and so I think I think that's cool. That counts as geek news.
Yes.
Nice. Jeff, did you bring
Brendan,
any
you
geek
should
news?
be next.
Oh, I should be next?
Go ahead. No, Jeff,
no.
definitely.
I'll throw it to Jeff.
Okay, so my geek news is old. It's very old, but it's a great story. And so Herbie Ryman, who was one of Walt's sketch artists, concept artists, the story goes that Friday night, Walt called him late and said, this was before Disneyland, before any of the parks existed, and said to Herbie, I'm going to New York on Monday. I need a sketch to show the bankers what the concept for Disneyland is going to be. And Herbie's like, it's Friday night. I have no idea what you want me to draw. There's no way. How would I do this? And Walt said, well, I'll stay with you for the weekend and I'll tell you what I want and you just draw it. And then I can take it on Monday and we'll head to New York and see if we can get the funding. So obviously they did it. There's an amazing sketch. If you look online, you can find it. It's Herbie Ryman's Disneyland sketch. And the fact that one pencil sketch that was done over a weekend is the reason all of the Disney parks and assets exist throughout the world. So geek news, I think so. A doodle.
Yeah.
A doodle for a weekend.
So
and millions of people all over the world, enjoy Disney parks, films, all of that. Love it.
Yeah, Disney has, while most companies have been like struggling, Disney on like the media front has been definitely like showing its adaptability and power. So then I can hop in next on geek news too. So for my geek news, it's movie related as usual. So the Black Widow movie, which was originally set to premiere the first week of May 7th, has been delayed again to July 9th. But it seems like this will be the last delay. I think this is unfortunate, but this is because Disney Plus is going to have it as a Premier Access option. I'm not a huge fan of the Premier Access stuff because it's so expensive and I already pay for Disney Plus, but also like they need to release movies. So I understand why they're doing it. But at the same time, it's like, all right, COVID, just go away so I can go to the movie theater comfortably, but I'll be vaccinated. So hopefully I'll be able to actually like go to the theater and do that. My next piece of news is Pierce Brosnan has been cast as Dr. Fate in the Black Adam movie. And I am so excited.
Wow.
For those of you who don't know who Pierce Brosnan is, I think of him as James Bond. Like that's where I know him from. Yes, 007. And I'm so excited that he's playing Dr. Fate because Dr. Fate is one of my favorite DC heroes. Of all time. Like for those of you who don't know Dr. Fate, he's kind of like the DC equivalent of Doctor Strange, but like they're still very different and distinct characters. But there's that.
That's so cool. I was just gonna say that with a face like Pierce Brosnan's, you don't want to cover that up with a helmet the whole movie. And Dr. Fate has a helmet the whole time. So I'm wondering how they're going to do that. He has a great voice though too. So
So it'd probably be like so it's not his movie, it's like the Black Adam movie. So like his scenes will probably be like mostly without helmet, and then the fight scenes will be with helmet. So that's my guess, but that movie's still a year away, or over a year away. So we'll see. And then my last bit of news is more like rumor based, but with the release of the Snyder Cut, the Russo brothers have been vocal about how much they like that. So the rumor floating around is that they have the potential to put together a 6-hour-long cut of Avengers Endgame to and potentially release that once the pandemic is over in theaters, to reclaim their title of Endgame as the highest grossing movie of all time. I would love this, but also I can't sit in a theater for 6 hours. Like, they need to have like a halfway mark where we can like get out and go to the bathroom. But also, like, if they're going to release if they have it, I would love to see a 6-hour cut. Because something I saw on like Twitter was people were like, oh, but like there were scenes in there that like, what did they deem less important than like Hulk dabbing and like Thor playing Fortnite? And I'm like, no, they cut out like whole storylines that they're going to add to. And I'm very excited to see like what they decided, this isn't necessary to the story we're trying to tell, but like we still think it's really cool. Alrighty. Hope.
Yes.
How much you got for us this week?
A lot. And you took 2 of mine. Well, ish.
Oh, good.
Parts of mine. So first off, Black Adam is also going to be a Dwayne Johnson movie. So Dwayne Johnson and Pierce Brosnan acting together, and like that's just like star power. Holy cow. But so I feel like I have to like read what I read off of this article. Because to me it was just like, all right, we got this. So it started with Dwayne Johnson isn't letting the hype of Zack Snyder's Justice League pass by. And so it goes on, Dwayne Johnson took to his Instagram to release the opening page of Black Adam's script in a video. And he also captioned it with, well, I'd love to wear a rainbow every day and tell the world that everything's okay, but I'll try to carry off a little darkness on my back till things are brighter. I'm the man in black. #BA Black Adam. So it's 3 weeks away from shooting is what Black Adam is. So I'm excited for that. And especially after hearing Pierce Brosnan coming in, like, star power right there. And then to go off your other one, Brendan, with Black Widow, Marvel also released a whole plethora of release dates for upcoming Marvel movies. So after Black Widow, you have September 3rd is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. November 5th is The Eternals. And December 17th is Spider-Man No Way Home. And that's just in this year. Next year, which is hopefully when we actually get Marvel movies back into theaters, so it'll be like 3 years since a Marvel movie has been in theaters, is March 25th with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. May 6th is Thor Love and Thunder. July 8th is Black Panther 2. October 7th is an untitled Marvel movie. Like, they didn't release it. They were just like, hey, something's coming out here. And I was like, excusez-moi?
Okay, they have like 10 projects like on the horizon that they have like casts and are shooting for. So do you think they're just like juggling which one they're going to put in that slot, or?
Probably, especially if it's like a smaller movie that they're probably going to do that for. And then the final one was November 11th, Captain Marvel 2. They had stuff for 2023, but it was like a lot of untitled stuff and like just like vague. So yeah, there's that. To go through, Captain Marvel 2 is supposed to be is set to start shooting on May 31st in LA, and it's also going to be shooting some scenes in London. So hopefully like COVID goes away so we can actually like get things filmed. There was also an announcement about a spin-off series of the Hawkeye movie coming out. I believe it was
Hawkeye series.
Well, it was with the deaf character,
Kate
the
Bishop.
female. Yeah. I think it was called like Echo or something like that. I
Echo.
apparently didn't say that. Yeah.
because that's not Kate Bishop.
That's,
That's Hawkeye's daughter, I believe. At least like the MCU set it up to be her.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know where I saved it to. Apparently I didn't save it, or it's just like not in my Raving Geeks folder on my phone. But so to go through a bunch of others, one that I'm surprised that Brendan didn't notice, because it's a CW show and it's about Batwoman. They have cast a new actress to play Kate Kane, and it's Wallace Day, and she was in the series Krypton and The Royals. I guess she was in like a recent episode, where they vaguely hinted that Kate Kane was back.
Oh, they've been hinting Kate Kane is alive this entire season. I'm just not caught up on the most recent episode. Otherwise, I probably would have said something.
Fair enough. Sorry if I spoiled anything.
Oh, no, it's okay. Honestly, I've seen it coming.
So we've got The Lost City of D. It's a romantic action comedy starring Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum, as well as Daniel Radcliffe, who is going to be playing the villain of this movie.
I love when he plays the villain.
Yes. I loved him in Now You See Me Too. That one was phenomenal. Benedict Cumberbatch is set to play a real-life British illusionist who used magic to defeat the Desert Fox in World War II in Colin Trevorrow's next film called War Magician.
Imitation Game meets Doctor Strange.
Tenet is set to debut on HBO Max on May 1st, which is interesting because Christopher Nolan was quoted a few months ago saying that HBO Max was the worst streaming service.
Until now, that's what he was getting at.
Mm-hmm. Until now that my movie's on it, and now that we, Jeff, just so you know, we constantly ask HBO Max for a sponsorship, just because none of us have HBO Max, but all of us want HBO Max. So, HBO Max, if you're listening again, please sponsor the podcast.
Hey, like I'm calling stuff out here, like Tenet, come on. Rick and Morty fans, there was an Animal Crossing crossover where Rick and Morty entered the Animal Crossing universe. It shows it was on Adult Swim, and it was a short like little thing. And Morty is mostly playing the game the way it's supposed to be played, while Rick. There are bee chase scenes, big robots, and even some lounging by the beach. So if you're into Rick and Morty and you love Animal Crossing New Horizons, that is something to check out. For Shazam, Fury of the Gods, Shazam 2, Helen Mirren has been cast as the villain Hespera, who is the daughter of the Greek god Atlas. So that will be an interesting change. For fans of DC Comics, Zatanna is coming out soon. Emerald Fennell, who I believe wrote Promising Young Woman, is set to write the theatrical movie focused on the DC heroine. If you are a fan of anime, Keanu Reeves is set to star in and produce the live-action film and anime series Berserker for Netflix.
That's exciting.
In the Heights has moved up their release date by a whole week. So instead of June 18th, it is now June 11th. And John Shu was quoted saying that is because of the high demand after the recent trailer release. They're like, hey, let's move this up a week. Give fans what they want.
Same day as Loki, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's my birthday too, fans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Look at all these presents they're giving me.
Falcon and Winter Soldier opened as the most watched series premiere ever on Disney Plus. Tyler Perry has a new film called A Jasmine's Blues, which will be releasing on Netflix. And this one is like super important to Tyler Perry because he actually wrote the script for this 26 years ago and has been trying to get it on film since then. It is set, so the film is set from 1937 to 87, and it follows an investigation into an unsolved murder, unveiling a story of forbidden love, deceit, and a secret that has been held for 40 years. So yeah, he's super excited for that, and I'm intrigued about that one. And then we've got National Treasure. For fans of the two movies for National Treasure 1 and 2, there is a third movie in the works with Jerry Bruckheimer and the original cast.
Oh, good.
And it's going to be like picking up where they left off at the end of National Treasure 2 with the whole secret book that the president definitely didn't tell Ben Gates about to look in when he was breaking into the National Library. There's also going to be a new TV series that will stream on Disney Plus, which will follow Jess Morales, a 20-year-old Latina character, and her friends who set off on an adventure to uncover her mysterious family history and recover lost treasure. So we will hopefully have both a streaming and big release, theatrical release soon for those two, and I'm really excited for that. So
Nice.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, that is it for Geek News today. And now we can move on to our main topic. If you haven't gotten the allusion to what we're talking about today, given Jeff's answers, Jeff formerly worked at the Disney parks that we are so lovingly talking about. So just to start it off, Jeff, what did you do when you worked for Disney?
So I was an Imagineer. I was a art director, creative director for WDI in Florida, in Orlando, Florida.
Nice. And so for those people not familiar with the term Imagineer, what did your day-to-day look like when you were working there?
So Imagineers, they're the group who design and build the parks, the ships, the rides, the shows, everything that you see as a guest when you come into the parks. And we do that all around the world, or they do that all around the world. And my day-to-day, it depended on what I was doing. So I had jobs from a graphic designer at Hollywood Studios or MGM Studios at the time. So my first day, I was on top of a bus, measuring a bus because they were going to redo the graphics for all the buses for the property. I worked on a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle truck, doing the graphics for that, so that thing would roll out and they don't spill out into the street and do their show. So anything from graphic design to art directing. I went to Magic Kingdom, was the art director for Magic Kingdom for about 1.5 years. And so you work with everybody. There's more than just the pieces that you see, right? The castle and Main Street and the rides and everything. There's a whole, network and operation behind all of that makes it happen. So my job, or Imagineering's job, is to put on the best show possible for the guests. And that's part of what I did.
It sounds really cool, and having seen you work, I know it is a really cool and fun job. So hope Isaac and I have some some questions about the process, if you don't mind. I know you're kind of stuck here, so well, not stuck, but so Hope, I know you had a question.
yeah, so I'll start at the beginning of how did you become an Imagineer? Sorry, Isaac.
Sorry, Isaac. Got another one. So I went to the Center for Creative Studies or College for Creative Studies in downtown Detroit, great school. And Disney sent a vice president up to take a look at one of the studio projects, which was a roller coaster at the time. And I put a portfolio at the time, a stack of papers about 2 inches thick, in his hands, and said I'd really like a job. And I landed an internship and then they offered me a job at the end of the internship, and I went back down. So at the time, it wasn't Imagineering in Florida. There was just a small contingency, and I ended up going to design and engineering as part of Walt Disney World. But as Imagineering grew in Florida, I started to go back and forth and do work for them, and then eventually I got pulled over to WDI.
All right. That's how you started. I guess how long were you an Imagineer?
So on and off, because I've come and gone from the company a couple times. So it varies, but I'd say I've been around with Disney since 1991. But so like 5-6 years at a time. And then this last time I was there for about a little over 8 years. So I'd say about 15 years total with Disney.
Nice. That's a quite a while working with like that company, like in Disney, like from the 90s to now, it's definitely like made some big changes. So like throughout your time there, what was like your favorite or like your biggest project that you were working on? Favorite, biggest, maybe two different ones or the same one?
Well, yeah, so two things. So when I started in the early 90s, we were drawing everything on boards, right? There was really no computer yet. So everything was hand drawn. So coming and going back, when I went back, everything was on computer. So Illustrator, Photoshop, all of that had been introduced, and we were utilizing all those programs. My favorite, I don't know. The thing is that everything, all the jobs are fun. All the projects are fun. I mean, doing graphics for Star Wars weekends, how can you beat that? I mean, I love Star Wars, right? That's why I'm in this industry. I was creative director, one of the creative directors for Disney Springs. So literally from, the initial concepts all the way through to, stepping in wet concrete as they poured it to opening day, did that. And then my latest gig with them before December was I was a creative director for Tron Light Cycle Run at Magic Kingdom. So, the work is different. The projects are different. The people are amazing. That's, probably the biggest draw for each of the projects. But when I went back, I was putting props back into Big Thunder Mountain. So 6 months, going up and down concrete hills and screwing barrels and ropes and all sorts of things into the landscape. It's interesting. It's all fun. And, at night, midnight, 2:00 in the morning, when the parks clear out, then we go back in and it's a whole nother world. They turn the work lights on and then, everybody gets to work and makes it new or different or, amazing for the next day for the guests. So it's interesting. It's really cool to walk through Magic Kingdom by yourself, with the lights and the music on and there's no one else around. It's pretty amazing. That
sounds really, really cool. Especially like with Magic Kingdom, in my experience, has the most like visual stuff. I mean, like Animal Kingdom has like the nature around it, but like all of like the things that people think of as like stereotypical Disney, that's all Magic Kingdom. So that'd be really, really cool. Can I follow up? Did you ever walk through Animal Kingdom at night? Because I feel like, with the animals there too, that one might be. No. I mean, they're in the safari area, but. No.
I never did that much work at Animal Kingdom. I did some graphics, and a couple smaller projects, but really nothing, no night installs. Pretty much studios, Epcot, and Magic Kingdom is where I spent most of my time. But yeah, again, any of the parks at night, it's interesting just to see how everything is without people around, right? Because then you start to see how they laid things out, the colors, the textures, the lighting, the music, how everything plays together. You get a real sense of what the place is, but then you also see how guests, in the location really bring it to life, and how the cast members who work the areas bring it to life. So it's a cool contrast.
It is. I can't even imagine that. Hope, you had something else related?
Yeah. So actually, you mentioned working on the Tron ride. I had watched the Disney Plus series Prop Culture, and I was wondering if you were able to get inspiration from like the original props that they still have around from like the original Tron movies.
So the Tron, yes, absolutely. I mean, I love the original Tron movie as a kid. And I love the Tron legacy, and that's what the aesthetic, what the look is based off of for Shanghai. So Scott Drake and team, they're the ones that did Shanghai. And so we went over 3 or 4 times to look what they had done and ride the ride again at 5 o'clock in the morning with no one around. Take a look at everything, and then basically copy that aesthetic and then recreate it in Florida is what we've done here. Some aesthetic changes to the building, but the ride is essentially the same, which, when it opens, you guys will see it. And actually, like we said, you have to come down so we can ride it. So
sounds good. And so just to clarify, you went over to the Shanghai location, which already has a Tron ride, and then came back and used that inspiration to kind of like incorporate that into the Orlando park?
Correct. Yeah. So essentially it's what the company calls a lift. So you take essentially the same attraction and then you redo it in a different location, but it is more or less the same, obviously because of the site differences, and there's some subtle differences. But if you ride Shanghai and then you ride Orlando, you're going to have the same amazing experience.
So did you do like a lot of traveling between, the Orlando locations and the other international locations as a part of your job?
On occasion. So Tron was probably the most. With Disney Springs, there was quite a bit of travel throughout the U.S., talking to third-party vendors and people that we wanted to bring in to be part of the story. But with Tron, there was quite a bit of overseas travel, which I loved. I mean, you get to see the world while working on a really cool project.
That's awesome. Isaac, I felt like I stole your question with that one, but I had to get it in there.
I was about to ask about travel, but that's okay. So, Jeff, as you might know, there are a plethora of hidden Mickeys in Disney parks. Did you have a hand in subtly putting any of those hidden Mickeys into the designs or anything?
So we don't really actually acknowledge hidden Mickeys, that they exist at all. So I can't really answer that question.
Wow. Okay. That's probably the best answer actually I could have gotten.
Hence the term hidden Mickey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But jumping off of that, in like the process of designing, we can talk specifically about Disney Springs. For those of you who haven't been to Disney in a little while, like the area that's formerly known as Downtown Disney has now been kind of like remodeled and updated and known as like Disney Springs. But if someone were to go visit now, based on the part you played in like doing that update and the like kind of like the new coat of paint in Downtown Disney, is there anything from like a design aspect that you're really proud of that like when you would walk through that you'd be like, oh, I got to play a part in that, or oh, I think that's really cool that just a typical guest may not see right away?
So, well, 2 things about Disney Springs. So when the company decided to upgrade it, if you will, there was the Village, which was the original shopping center, which was from the 70s. There was Pleasure Island from the 80s, and then West Side from the 90s. And from a Disney perspective, there was no story that unified those 3 different business ideas, essentially. So we created the story of Disney Springs, which is the story of a repurposed town. So it's a town that's been adaptively reused, and we like to say lovingly restored. So like cities throughout the US, throughout Europe, buildings are built, they're utilized, then they're sold, or they go dormant for a while, and someone moves in and repurposes the building. So that was the idea behind Disney Springs. So everything from 1850, when the spring was discovered, and we actually built a spring. The first cabin that was built, it was a rancher, and his family settled there and grew their business. But then it grew through the turn of the century, where you had the industrial aspect come into town. And then around the 1920s, they wanted to build a proper town center for all the merchants. So just like a studio, everything that we do is based off of story, and the best design comes out of a good story. It can be a sentence or it can be a paragraph. So that is the background of Disney Springs. But from an aesthetic standpoint or a design standpoint, Jock Lindsay's Hangar Bar was one of my main projects for Disney Springs. And being able to hide all of those Easter eggs in there, there's over 30 Lucasfilm Easter eggs in that location. But from the lamella ceiling, which is what they did in the 1920s to build air hangars, to all of the props. So Jock Lindsay, if you don't know, is Indiana Jones' pilot from the first film. So when he's being chased down the hill, he's like, Jock, start the plane. So the engines that you see on the outside of the building and the engine hanging over the bar on the inside, it's not from the plane in the film, but it's from the same make and model plane that was utilized in the film. So that level of detail, I love. And as you go through and you look, there's story points all the way around. I mean, there's a dive bell. So, Jock not only shuttled Indiana Jones around, but he also started his own expedition adventure business. So he had other adventures outside of Indy, and we tell those stories in subtle ways throughout the whole inside of the building. So that was a lot of fun, and that was a 2+ year. So again, that was from in a conference room with sticky notes and pictures and little doodles that we made and writing words down and everything to, opening day when we as a team stood there and marveled at what the company had created. So a lot of fun.
It sounds like so much fun. Like it's not just your typical desk job, and you've made that very, very clear.
No, actually, yeah. As and being in creative for Imagineering, there is the time for the desk, but then there's a lot of field work. So being an art director and a creative director, again, my job is from the initial doodle to the implementation, to shop visits to vendors to watch things be built, to then, the overnights where things are installed, and then even follow up after that to make sure that things function as we designed, and that it's giving the guests the best experience. And that translates even into my work now with my own company on, doing the same thing, following storylines, and again, from A to Z with the whole process.
That's really, really cool. Yes, Hope.
Okay.
I was gonna segue, but you got this.
Yeah. I feel like you already kind of answered this a little bit, but like, how do you decide on like the final design of a project? Like, how do you say this is exactly what we want, and like what story we want to show off? So
you said the right word there, right? It is story. It's always about the story. And again, it can be a sentence, or it can be a paragraph, or it can be, a multi-page script. But what you do is you pick the setting, you pick the characters, you pick what the message is, what the story that you want to tell. And then essentially, as you make design decisions, you touch back to that story and say, within this story framework, would that make sense? So we always utilize the idea of one of those plastic A-frames you'd see in the mall, right? So if I was to take that and put that into Galaxy's Edge, that would, in your mind, you would walk out and say, "Wow, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't tell the story of this immersive environment that we've created." Because that's the biggest thing, right? When you go to Disney, when you go into a park, you want to be immersed. You want to basically walk away from the rest of the world and have this amazing experience. So design-wise, we always go back to the story and say, why are we doing this? Why is this blue? Why is this red? Why is the mortar between the bricks like this and not that? Why would this be wood siding, or why would the concrete, more shell, more aggregate? It even goes down to the planting, right? Like Disney Springs, the company repurposed these huge oaks from World Disney to tell the story that had been around from 1850, right? If we went to a nursery and bought, itty bitty little trees and planted those all around, and you came in and I said, yeah, the town's been around for 100+ years, and you'd be like, it doesn't work. Your brain doesn't buy it. But, a 100-year-old oak standing there with the massive branches and trees. And we hung lanterns in there, to tell the story of how they used to have a campfire underneath and repurposing, not repurposing, but reutilizing that story in a modern way, or to tell that story, that the history of that tree and of that location. It all plays together.
All right. Well, to piggyback off of Hope's question, is there like an average, I guess, like, I guess, how long does a project normally take? Is there like an average amount of time from like the beginning conception, like doodles, to it, cutting the ribbon, to it being open? I guess whatever the project is.
There's not an average time, but it's I would say anywhere from 3 to 5 years. It's very similar to the film industry, and that there's a really long development phase, and sometimes projects go through multiple concepts before you get to a final. So, Hope, to your question about how do you pick what story, sometimes it sounds really good, and the initial artwork looks really cool, and then you get to a point, and either from a business perspective or a story perspective or a timing perspective, as the world, everything changes, as you see on a daily basis now, it just doesn't make sense. So you have to revisit, and maybe sometimes you shelve the idea, or sometimes they eliminate the idea, but there's always those parts and pieces of things that you've done in the past that you can pull forward and reutilize or repurpose. But it depends, because some things are done in 8 months, 10 months, right? If there's a drive, there's a business need, and the guests, we know the guests are going to love it, or they know the guests are going to love it, then it can go even faster. But a roller coaster or a land, something like that, there's so much detail. I mean, I was talking about concrete at Disney Springs. There's multiples of different configurations and colors, and how much exposure of rock and shell. And it sounds maybe extensive or too much, but if we were to just pour gray concrete like you'd see at the mall everywhere, and again, you walk into this 100-plus-year-old town, you're like, why does it look like a mall? Why does it feel something? It's gray concrete. That doesn't make any sense. So,
in addition to like these design aspects, because like a big part of your job, you've talked about like making those decisions for like the story of the design you're making, and then eventually installing it and going along that process is the main part of your job. But was there anything else that you would do, like in addition to design?
So, well, I was talking about, and even now, it's working with different partners, different disciplines, right? So anywhere from the landscapers to the electricians to the operator, a lot of being an art director or a creative director is knowing how to work with other people, right? Because all of their jobs is as important as your job. It is a collective team. So a lot of meetings, right? A lot of talking through, you talk to people that actually work with the final product, and what works, what do they like, what do they don't like. And then all of those parts and pieces you have to, I always use the example of like talking to an electrician, right? Or to a plumber. They're talking about a specific light bulb or lamp, but in my head, I'm thinking of the whole facility and how that singular piece works into the whole facility, right? That works with like a land. It can work with a room. It can work with a whole land. It can work with a whole park. But you have to keep track of individual wants or requests and how that plays out with the whole storyline.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of got to like be the translator between like the really technical part of it where you're working with vendors and then what the guests want to see. You got to like decode that jargon to get to the point where guests are going to be like, oh, I like the guests might not say it, I like the lighting in here, but there was this whole process that you mediated that said like, all right, we need these kinds of light bulbs to produce this effect that the guests are going to notice.
Exactly. So again, if it's a restaurant from the 1920s, but we have fixtures that we bought from the local store, 2 miles down the road, and just plugged them all in, and you're like, I had that same exact light fixture in my house. You're like, maybe that doesn't tell the proper story. So even down to flooring, right? Is it a natural wood floor? Is it a tile floor? Is it polished concrete? What is it? But I'm dealing with the people pouring the concrete. I'm dealing with the carpenters putting the wood trim in, dealing with the electricians, the folks installing the signage. I mean, graphics. We always say graphics are, they always wait to the last second. And like, oh yeah, we need a graphics package. But a graphic, a marquee makes a huge difference on a building, right? If it's poorly designed, poorly illuminated, the colors aren't right, it detracts. But if it's done properly, then it's like a piece of jewelry. It makes the whole thing shine. And when all the components work and then it functions properly, then it's an amazing experience for the guests. And that's your job on a daily basis, is to make sure that all these parts and pieces come together, that when folks walk in or experience this immersive environment, that it is the most amazing thing that they've ever experienced or walked into.
So along that line of interacting with everyone on this process, did you ever interact with the guests in any capacity? Like in your role as an Imagineer?
Well, as an Imagineer, again, we're backstage, but part of our job is definitely going out into the park and watching, right? Our jobs are not to interact with the guests, and actually to kind of be quiet, or it's not hidden, but since we wear jeans or t-shirts or things because we're out and, walking through construction zones, things like that. But definitely going out and watching how people react. And, people getting on the rides, people getting off the rides. In Florida, of course, shade's a huge deal. So watching folks stand out or yourself standing out in the baking sun and saying, oh yeah, we probably should put some shade structures in here. Or, we need another water fountain or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. But being a good designer, being a good creative art director is paying attention and listening, right? From our partners, from operations, to maintenance, whatever it may be, if you listen, and especially to the guests, they'll tell you what they want, they'll tell you what they need. And sometimes when they don't say things, you can figure stuff out like, yeah, okay, probably should look at this or that. So
it really is from like beginning to end, like drawing board to vendors to like feedback once it's out there.
Absolutely, because nothing's perfect, right? I mean, drawings are one thing, and you can spend as much time as you want on a drawing, but when it goes to the field, there's always going to be subtle changes, and there's always going to be challenges. And then when you open, people are people. Sometimes they don't do things that you thought they were going to do, or they don't react how you thought they were going to react. Again, I go back to film, right? You can put a film up and the group of people don't laugh where you thought they were going to laugh, and they don't like the ending, or they love the ending and you hated the ending, or whatever it may be. So it's the same idea. But yeah, it's from beginning to end and then beyond. So as a park art director, you're in the park every day with your partners, right? So you're seeing things on a daily basis and making decisions and adjustments, again, with your partners collectively, again, to make it a better experience. It's like life. It's a constantly changing thing. And the more you pay attention and the more you make adjustments, the better you do.
I guess another question I have, and this is more on like a personal level, more than like about the parks itself, but what do you think was your like biggest learning experience, or like biggest takeaway from working as an Imagineer?
I would have to say the power of teamwork, and again, I'll say listening. But on such huge projects, there's no, and I know this is like a cliche, but there's no I. It's always a we, because you cannot do it by yourself. I mean, just like a film, you're talking hundreds, if not thousands of people to make things happen. So, as a creative, as a designer, a lot of people, and I was the same way for quite a while, that you just want, you want to do it. You want it to be yours, but then you realize that if it's just yours, then it loses the richness that other people can bring to it. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned. And, experience with Disney is the collective power of the group. I mean, sitting with somebody like a senior art director, senior creative director, and spending a couple hours just going and talking about color and pulling out color chips and looking at things and how different things play. And you come in with a base design, but then spend a couple hours, couple days, couple weeks, couple months just talking about color. You realize, and are lucky to pull from their experience, and again, how much that adds to your work as a designer, as a creative. So that's one of the best takeaways that I had. And then I was also lucky too that I got to meet and on a light basis, work with people like John Hench or Marty Sklar. Presented Disney Springs to Diane Disney, Walt's daughter. So I got to get close to the people that really made it happen from the beginning.
Reflecting back on Brendan's questions earlier too, and you were talking about going out and like seeing how the guests interacted with the different areas that you created and put up. Were there any times like that the guests didn't interact with like how you wanted them to, or like didn't react how you wanted them to, and you wanted to like go up to them and be like, why aren't you seeing my vision, or like why aren't you enjoying this the way you should be?
I would say it's more of it's interesting to see what people do, right? And see how they interact with what you've designed, what the group has designed, and how you've constructed it and implemented it. I wouldn't say it's more of an interest in how do we adjust, because what we're thinking is, but you're not getting the best experience. The experience could be better if but we can see that it's not translating. You're not getting it per se, or you're not getting it how we think you should, understand it. So what can we do to make adjustments to make it the experience that we designed in the first place? Or is there a better way or a different way with a different outcome that is even better than what we started with? I mean, you always have to be open to things changing, and that change, yes, it's not your original vision, but the kids are smiling, the parents are happy, everyone's having a good time. So that is the right answer.
We can definitely relate to like these points, like here at Raving Geeks, as part of like making a podcast on a smaller level. Like there's a reason there's three of us. If it was just one of us, then it would go in a completely different direction. We need the feedback from each other. And then we need feedback from like the audience, even if they're not going to receive episodes like the way we thought. Like maybe we just had an offhand comment, and that's like the thing that like people are like, oh, that's my favorite episode because of this one joke he made that like was persistent throughout. And that's like never really intentional. So I feel like throughout like this whole creative process, like it's big, like it's really big at Disney, but it's, you can apply it more than just that area. Isaac, I know you had another question.
I have a two-parter. Did you visit Disney before you got the job there, or was that like your first experience?
No, I had visited. We went down a couple times growing up, so we would go to the parks. So I had the experience of going to the parks as a kid. We would get in and run straight back for 20,000 Leagues or Space Mountain. Go all the way to the back of the park. But I mean, it was a shock to me too that suddenly I was standing there in the middle of Magic Kingdom, and I'm like, wow, I work here.
Yeah, and part of that is now that you have worked behind the scenes, you know how the sausage gets made. Has it lost the magic at all for you of experiencing this world, because you know kind of how it's built, kind of how like someone that becomes a cook can like eat at a restaurant and all they do is analyze the food instead of actually just embracing that taste? So
no, I'm still a kid. I can turn it off and I go in and I'm there to have a good time. I'm not there to pick apart other people's work or my own work. I enjoy it for what it is. And again, Galaxy's Edge, I bought the Star Wars sketchbook when I was 9 years old, 10 years old, and saw, Joe Johnston and these other folks, just their pen and grayscale renderings of X-Wings and things like that. And I knew I wanted to get into film. I wanted to get into design. So when I walk into a park, any park throughout the world, I let go and I'm there to have a good time. Entertain me. I want to have fun. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And then like one last question. We've talked a little bit about like how you got here to like be an Imagineer. You like told that process, but is there any advice you would have for people that want to get in like to this like creative design aspect? Maybe not specifically Imagineering, but something similar. Because I know like now you're working on like similar projects, just in like a different realm than Disney. Because I feel like throughout this, like there's stuff we've talked about that even I didn't know, and I've talked to you about this before. And to me, this sounds like really, really fascinating, even though this isn't the type of job that I'm aiming for. But is there anything like you could tell people that might be interested in this?
Yes. So I would say, just again, be open. So no matter what you do, if you want to get into a creative field, and actually, many different fields, because, finance people will say to me, well, I'm not creative. And I'm like, no, you are. It takes, there's a lot of brain power to work the numbers, to make things work and figure things out. And it is a craft. But just be open, and then whatever experience that you can have it. Take it. If you can design jewelry. If you can have an opportunity to do textiles, do that. Printmaking, draw, paint, sketch. Everything is so digital now, but if you can, again, work with your hands and build things and tear things apart and figure out how things work, all of those types of ideas. But just be open, and again, if someone offers you an opportunity to do something, then go and do it, because you never know there's a little piece of that experience that 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, that you'll pull back out of your brain and say, oh, I know how to do that, or I have an idea how to do that, and I can combine that with all these other things that I've learned and produce this amazing result. I mean, I do it all the time. Again, from I've designed railings for Art Nouveau railings for houses, to a kids TV program, to packaging for pharmaceutical companies. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. It's all different end result, but the process is the same. But the more that I can feed that process from different aspects and different ideas, then the richer and more interesting the end product turns out to be.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being willing to answer our questions and everything. I got a lot out of this, and I really hope that everyone else did too. It was I feel like it's a very exciting thing to talk about, to kind of go behind the scenes of one of the most magical places on Earth.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. And I had a great time, and talk about it whenever you guys want to talk about it.
Thanks. Now, before we get going, as always here on Raving Geeks, we like to end with some recommendations for our viewers, whether that be movies, video games, comics, or anything else geeky. Hosts, do you have any recommendations?
I'll start off this section. So on the day that we are filming this episode, this series has not come out yet. It is coming out tomorrow, Friday, March 26th, on Netflix. It is The Irregulars. I have been trying to hype it up the past couple of episodes because I'm really excited for it. And so I'm going to be trying not to be late to things tomorrow, as I'm watching the entire series come out, all of season 1, because it is Sherlock Holmes, and it does have supernatural and two of my favorite things combined. Yay. Also, Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 2 comes out tomorrow, and I really liked the first episode. My brother-in-law and I and my dad all talked about it. It was a bit expository and just explaining things, but it set up the series so nicely. And then this one I had mentioned earlier in this episode, but Prop Culture on Disney Plus. It is so cool. I cried during a couple of the episodes because of the emotions and everything that goes into just everything that we've been talking about this entire episode, how much goes into the storytelling, and yeah, it's a really cool series.
All right, I'll have to check it out. I would like to recommend a video game. The video game is Subnautica. It's not necessarily new, but I'm finally playing it for the first time, and it's essentially you're trapped on an alien planet, but it's an alien water planet. And so it pretty much the entirety of the game is you're underwater, and it really invokes this sense of fear if you're afraid of the water. If you're not afraid of the water, it's a very beautiful environment. Lots of coral and fish and unique things. Since it's alien, like you don't even recognize everything for what it is. And that's really fun. I started playing that. Give it a look. I'd also like to recommend, I've mentioned Disney Villainous before, but I'm also going to recommend Disney Villainous and its expansions because I think it has 3 with more villains. And like, I'm holding up a box that has a Scar in it, as well as Yzma from Emperor's New Groove, and Ratigan from The Great Mouse Detective. And that's really fun. Get all your friends together, play it, defeat heroes, be villainous.
Nice.
The Great Mouse Detective, that's a throwback.
That is. I haven't watched that in a while. Jeff, do you have any recommendations for us?
So again, I'll do a throwback. So again, 1, look up the Herbie Ryman, the original Disneyland sketch, which you can find online. And then 2, the great concept designer Sid Mead passed away not that long ago. But Sid was an incredible designer, production designer, concept artist. So look him up, and it's a visual feast. You'll be amazed by what he did.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. On my end for recommendations, my roommate has been playing this game called Forager all week. I walked down the other day like for breakfast, and it was just like on the TV still because he had recently gone to bed and forgot to turn the switch off. And I'd gotten up to start my day. So if you're a fan of Minecraft, it's kind of like similar like concept to that, where you kind of like collect resources to like build out and expand out on your territory. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely go for it. And I'll give some of my favorite like Disney stuff that's not like necessarily like everyone's favorite Disney stuff. I really like The Lion King 1.5. If you haven't seen it, it's like the kind of the story of the first Lion King, but from Timon and Pumbaa's perspective. You kind of get some of their background. So if you haven't seen that, highly recommend. And then one of my favorite Disney movies of all time was the live action adaptation of Beauty and the Beast. And I thought that was magnificently done. So if you haven't had the chance to watch that, that's also on Disney Plus. So that is all we have for you all today. Thank you all for joining us here on Raving Geeks. Make sure you leave a comment wherever you're listening from. We'd love to hear all your thoughts about what we talked about today, or anything you want to hear us talk about in the future. Also, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter at Raving Geeks, and on our TikTok, also at Raving Geeks, which as of today, I posted another one that got almost 5,000 views. So I feel like we're starting to trend on TikTok, everyone. I also want to give another very special thank you to our guest, Jeff Abraham. Thank you so much for coming in today. I had a great time. It looks like Hope and Isaac also had a great time. This was a really, really fun experience and conversation to have with you. So as always, I've been Brendan Valentine, along with
Hope Gooderall.
I'm Isaac Hunter.
All right. Stay geeky and have a great week, everyone. Good night. Or day, whenever you're listening to this.